Hey everyone, it's the Media Men. I'm Ben.
And I'm Keegan.
And today we're going to begin a new series on our channel called Media Men Specials by first looking at Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. This might be a little different from other discussions you're used to. We're going to look at both the bad and the good from the movie and see what Disney and Lucasfilm could learn from it. Alright, so Keegan, let's start off with you, and let's start off with the bad. How do you want to lead us in?
Well, I think any good way to lead in would be from the beginning, and I thought the first 30 minutes of the movie were really slow and kind of boring. A lot of it, had, I think, some of the lesser acting skills that were slightly developed throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it was pretty... I remember really enjoying that scene as a kid. Like the opening thing when they're on the Trade Federation ship, but wow. It was pretty boring. Like, there's just no getting around it.
Yeah, I think a lot of that as a child was just getting to see them take out their lightsabers was awesome.
Yeah, and the lightsaber scenes are cool, but like everything in between is so not interesting. Just like some of the dialogue that they have. There's one, and if you've seen the Red Letter Media review of this movie, you know exactly what we're about to say. One of the Trade Federation guys, he goes, "They should be dead by now. Destroy what's left of them." And then you're just like, that's really dumb. Why not just leave them in there?
Just leave them in there for 4 hours. I don't know.
Yeah, like you open the doors. So if you hadn't opened the doors, they would have likely just been stuck in there because they weren't trying to cut their way out, which was what they should have been doing. It was just very awkwardly constructed. Like, I just don't understand how a story team sat down and was like, yeah, that's fine. But, it's not that big of a deal. It's just kind of funny looking back on it. I never really thought it before again as a kid when I first saw the movie, like how it just didn't make any sense. Another issue with the opening 30 minutes, aside from not being very interesting, is the motivations for the villains are pretty unclear. And I know that a lot of movies develop it as it goes along, but you don't really know why they want to invade Naboo, why there's a blockade. They're just doing it because some mysterious guy in a hologram is telling them to. I didn't think that was explained very well.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. I mean, if I had to guess, I would assume that it would have to do with making them money because everything revolves around money, no matter who you are. Yeah, so I don't think the opening was very clear either of or throughout the whole movie, really, of what anyone's motivations were. I also thought that in the beginning scene, there was a power that the Jedi used where they ran super fast. Speed of light fast. So I don't understand why they would have something like that and then never use it again. And especially in times where it would have been super helpful to have that power. But they never used it again. It seemed like it was completely used as a plot device, which I'm sure that's exactly what it was. But it just didn't make any sense to me.
Like, they couldn't have thought any better way to get them out of that scene. They could have had a cool chase scene where the droidekas were chasing the Jedi, and that would have been interesting. But, they didn't do that.
No, they did not.
I think the biggest issue with how fast that they end up running is, like as you said, they didn't use it again throughout the movie. And I know in the expanded universe and in the Clone Wars cartoon and in the books, like, Jedi can augment their physical abilities. Like, that's a pretty well-known characteristic of using the Force. But they were running really fast. Like, faster than has been alluded to in any of the extra Star Wars media. And, yeah, that was bad. It's straight up, it is a plot hole. Like, there's no getting around it. Like, that was just bad writing. I mean, it's just like, they might have not intended the Jedi to be running that fast, but they might have been more doing what a lot of TV shows do, is to save time, just so the scenes flow better together. They have characters get to places faster than they would otherwise. But so that could have been what they were going for. But it did just seem like they ran super, super fast and then just forgot they had that power for the rest of the movie. And then all the subsequent movies.
Yeah, I completely agree. So that would be a serious issue for the new movies if they were to ever implement something used as completely a plot device and have nothing to do with events that are gonna that's going to aid them in the future or anything.
Oh yeah, it was entirely contrived, and I think the J.J. Abrams is a capable director, and they worked with the story team to craft this movie, so I think that's probably fine. I'm sure that script was gone over like 50 times, probably more. I don't know how many revisions of, like, they probably, like, you know, tried to make this as bulletproof logic-wise as they possibly could.
Yeah, I'm sure they're trying to get very accurate in the details of where everything is in relation to each other, how each character moves, how they can play off of each other's characteristics.
Yes, and so I want to kind of go into a few more bad things about the movie. We just wanted to get into the introduction to the movie right off the bat. But so the acting in the movie is pretty flat overall. Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson are very good actors, so I know it's not their fault. Qui-Gon, you could argue, is playing the stern, wise Jedi, so he didn't come off as flat as some of the other characters did.
Yeah, I think that Qui-Gon, you know, he's a wise Jedi, you could say, but he's also a very rebellious Jedi.
Yeah.
So
and
he just really defied the council to get anything he wanted.
Yeah, pretty much. He clearly didn't agree with the council on everything, and I think they should have gone into his rebelliousness a little more. I think the movie would have been greatly improved had they'd taken the story perspective from Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, like completely from their perspective, and followed them throughout the movie, and then on the other half, seeing the Chancellor manipulate things. Because he did it a little bit, but you didn't know that that's what he was doing. So I think that's why motivations and stuff come off as confusing, because you don't understand why the Chancellor is saying... Or, sorry, not the Chancellor, the Senator Palpatine is saying the things that he's saying. And you don't know why characters are listening to him. But, like, once you get the context of the other movies and the Clone Wars show, then you're like, oh, okay, he's using the dark side to manipulate people and that kind of thing, so...
Yeah. And, I mean, I thought there were a few good scenes to show Qui-Gon's rebelliousness, though. Like, for instance, when the Jedi Council disapproved Anakin to be trained, he was literally just like, I'll just train him myself. And then they were like, you can't have two Padawans. So he was just like, fuck it, you're out, Obi.
Get out of here.
So he was like, look, I'm not training a Padawan anymore. I guess it's time for me to take a new Padawan on, huh?
Yeah. So he worked, I think, a little bit more than people want to give it credit for, but to a larger extension, the rest of the acting was pretty flat, aside from Ewan McGregor and some of the aliens, especially Amidala. Oh my God, she's the definition of a wet board of wood. Like, wow, I forgot.
Talking to a wall.
Yeah, I really, really forgot how not good her acting was in this movie. And I mean, like, it stuck out. It
almost sounded kind of like a little child trying not to laugh, so they're being, like, way too serious.
Yeah, it's just, her tone of voice is just completely unwarranted half the time. And I just didn't understand why she was talking like that.
No. I also thought the Trade Federation characters were ridiculous when they talked.
Oh my God, they were like clearly like racist caricatures. It was maybe not intended that way, but it was pretty bad. I was just, when they talked, oh man, there's one scene later on in the movie where he's talking to a senator, and then the senator's sorry, not a senator, one of the people from Naboo, and like the people in charge, and he goes, "Take him away," and I'm just like, why are you talking like that? Why? It was just so ridiculous. I legitimately laughed during that scene, so I was just like...
And it's never good when a movie makes you laugh that is trying to be serious and create tension.
Speaking of scenes that are supposed to be funny, but that end up not being funny, pretty much any scene involving the Gungans, and not just Jar Jar, like the Gungan boss man also, his whole like way he like shakes his mouth and does the... I don't like that.
No, it was pretty stupid. I think a lot of that humor was directed towards kids. It really pandered towards them, but
yeah,
I don't even know that it hit kids' sense of humor.
Yeah, it was... I remember not bothering me when I was a kid, but I don't remember laughing.
No, neither do I.
I was so ambivalent towards Jar Jar, and to be fair, I mean, Jar Jar really doesn't piss me off that much. I mean, he's definitely silly and annoying, but I wasn't like, oh my God, can't believe this character's in this movie, ruined the whole thing.
Yeah, I think another big part of that was the creators when they made the show or the movie, George Lucas or whoever the writers that helped him out were, they
No,
acknowledged.
he had no help. He did the whole thing by himself, which is why a lot of the pieces fell flat. Anyways,
Yeah,
continue.
no, I believe that, but I'm just saying he did literally the first line out of Qui-Gon's mouth was insulting him for being an idiot. So you knew that through the rest of the movie, he's going to continue to be an idiot because he was pegged from the first second they met.
Oh yeah, the ability to speak does not make you intelligent. And yeah, so they established him as a stupid character. He just wasn't funny, which was the problem. I guess he's comedic relief in a movie that was tonally flat, so it doesn't having comedic relief doesn't do much. So, the character motivations are a little bit fuzzy. Also, if you watch the Clone Wars series, you get a lot more of that. Also, the Jedi Council, they come off as kind of, not very nice. I want to say kind of just dickish in general. But again, the Clone Wars gives the missing context that you need to understand where the Jedi Order is at. You get the sense that they're not perfect, which they don't really explain in these prequel movies, which I think George Lucas was trying to get across, or what he wanted to, but just ultimately didn't. So those, I think, are the biggest things. Just the flat dialogue, the flat tone. The ending was a little bit muddied. I mean, there's like 4 different scenarios going on, and you really only cared about one of them because they didn't establish the characters in a way to make you care enough. So
Yeah. I think, one of the big flaws I had with the movie as well was that a lot of times they would narrate what they were doing almost as if George Lucas didn't think that the audience would get it. So, like, for example, when Anakin was flying the plane at the end in space, he was doing moves, but he was like, I should turn left. I should do a spin. Like, you don't need to tell us that. You can just show us that. We can easily see in a plane if someone's doing a spin or turning left.
yeah, it was completely unnecessary. Like, I was watching it and I was like, why is he saying this to us? Why is there a child-sized helmet? Why is the shield generator in the cargo in the bay where you can easily destroy it if you flew into it? Why all these things? Why are they happening?
And why didn't any of the adults realize that you could go into the cargo bay?
Yeah, so it's just like, come on. But, these, I think, are small things, relatively speaking. The whole Naboo scene, the whole space above Naboo where they were trying to destroy the Trade Federation ship was very not well done. The whole scene where they're infiltrating the palace should have been really cool, but there was no tension because you didn't get to know the characters very well.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think the biggest downfall was not establishing your characters well enough or giving you reason to A, care about them, or B, just simply understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, they should have had Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan as the main characters and then had Padme and Anakin as secondary characters, and that way you would have gotten a better feel for all of them. And I think that's kind of what they were going for, but from like a movie perspective, you just didn't get enough of any of the characters to really get that sensation. But, I think that's most of the negatives. I mean, those are all pretty big negatives. That said, while watching it, I didn't think it was the worst thing ever. It was more just boring than it was, like, terrible.
Yeah, I agree. The boringness of it was kind of obviously dull, but I don't know. It didn't offend me.
No, it didn't. It wasn't offensively bad. I don't think it ruined anything. I know a lot of people don't like the midichlorians thing, but again, I don't think that's a very big deal. I think a lot of people, it's left them kind of ambiguous in the movie as to what midichlorians are, as to what they do, what their function is. And I think a lot of people seem to think that midichlorians are the Force, which is not the case if you go and watch the Clone Wars series. And even based on what Qui-Gon says, he said it allows you to communicate with the Force. So I don't really understand why that bothers people. I mean, I've heard it explained many a time, but I still don't get it. I was just like, okay. Maybe it's because we grew up with these movies in addition to the 4, 5, and 6, so we never felt that way.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is that, this movie wasn't ruining anything for us. Like, I mean, when I was a kid, I saw all 6 movies in a row from chronological order from episode 1 to episode 6. So to me, the movies just kept getting better as they went on, and it wasn't like, such a huge downfall. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. So I didn't really have an emotional bias towards any of them, which is why I think, especially, the first one and the third one, I didn't find that bad.
The second one's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, we'll save that one for another discussion.
Yeah, but as far as the Phantom Menace is concerned, it was fine. I think the 57% on Rotten Tomatoes and 60% audience approval rating is pretty fair.
I think so too.
It's definitely not good. It's poorly executed in many, many ways, but I wasn't offended by its badness as many people were. I didn't get that. And I get it. I can understand not liking this movie. That's perfectly fine. I wouldn't even say I really like the movie, but I think the level that people put it at is it's not one of the worst movies of all time. There are much worse movies than this movie.
There are. But, I think we should move on to a few good things that we found in the movie specifically.
Definitely, because believe it or not, I think people get very, very wrapped up in the badness of the movie that they don't look at the good stuff, because I think there are some good things. The first thing I wanted to hit before we touch on the more big good things is I thought some of the dialogue was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan has a lot of snarky comments that work really well that felt in line with the original trilogy. Also, Qui-Gon has a line like, "That's the sound of 1,000 terrible things coming this way." And I just thought that whole scene was really cool. It's a very small thing, but I thought it worked well.
It was a very good line for a Jedi to say, I thought.
Yeah. And then we already went over the ability to speak does not make you intelligent line. Yep. So there's some fun dialogue. But I think the biggest positive I think both of us have to say about the movie is that it really started to pick up once they got to Tatooine.
Yeah, I thought so too. I enjoyed the banter between Qui-Gon and Anakin and his mother.
Yeah, the discussions they had while I guess they were eating dinner or something. I thought that was very well done. You established Anakin as like a kind-hearted kid, very passionate. I mean, the acting wasn't good, but through the dialogue you kind of get that sensation. The whole dynamic between them I thought was actually pretty well done. I thought that scene was good.
Yeah, and I think that Anakin and his mother's relationship was done well.
Yeah, you definitely got that they were mother and son. The whole goodbye scene between the two of them I thought was done really well. The music, it hit all the emotional points as well as they could with the child acting not being as all that great.
Yeah, and as for a child actor, I mean, I didn't think he was that bad. Like, child actors are known not to be very good, so I thought he was at worst an average child actor.
Yeah, he just kind of sounded like a little kid to me. Like his inflections sounded very much like how little kids actually talk. Maybe that's just my experience as a camp counselor, but kids talk like that. He has some dumb dialogue, like "Are you an angel?" Like that whole scene. It didn't bother me that much, but bothered some people. Yeah, I thought the relationship was handled well. I thought the dynamic between Qui-Gon, her, and Anakin was also handled well. I thought that was one of the highlights of the movie, actually.
I thought so, too. One of the other things I actually did enjoy about Anakin is they did highlight that he has intelligence beyond his years.
Yes, he seemed smarter. You already got the conflicting nature of his personality. They established that pretty early on. He doesn't know if he wants to go. He doesn't want to let go of his mom, but he also wants to become a Jedi.
Which, I mean, come on. Who wouldn't that tear apart, though, if you knew you could go be a Jedi, but you had to leave your mom?
Yeah, like, again, you need to watch the Clone Wars series to get much better context on the Jedi Council, but the way they set it up and how they're not allowed to feel anything is dumb. But then you get a sense of why they have those rules, why Anakin builds his resentment, why, Obi-Wan explains in a line in the show, basically kind of summing it up very well. And so you really need to check that series out. And I think it'll put the prequel movies in a better perspective.
Yeah, it's not always so much as the Jedi doesn't allow you to feel, but it's how you deal with those feelings and which feelings are stronger and more prevalent in you, I think.
That's exactly what it is. That's kind of what the show gets into. It's not so much that you can't feel, it's that you have to learn how to deal with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Because human emotions are natural. That's what Obi-Wan says in the Clone Wars series. He goes, it's natural for us to feel these feelings. It's not that we can't feel them. It's just that you have to be able to separate yourself from the logical and best path from the ones your feelings are guiding you to. And I don't think that the Jedi themselves communicate that very well, and that's kind of something that's established. They have their rules and their traditions, and they kind of just expect you to understand them. I don't think they do a very good job of teaching them to you.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
So it's kind of like the flaws of a learning system. We could get into that, but
And I mean, speaking of the Clone Wars, because of the backstory that it delves into, and you understand where all the characters are at these points in times and what their motivation is, it really helps you to understand all of the delegations being held in the Senate in Episode 1.
oh yeah, definitely. They established that the Senate is definitely corrupt beyond just a line in the movie, in the series. So that kind of gives you, it retroactively kind of makes those scenes better because it makes you understand them more.
Exactly. Like, I wasn't nearly as bored in the delegation scenes this time that I watched it because I knew exactly what they were trying to do and what they were trying to get at.
Exactly. So I think that maybe it doesn't make the movie itself better, but it gives you the frame, the context that the series gives you to be able to
Enjoy the movie more.
Yeah. So that's, I don't want to say that's a positive for the movie, but it's definitely not as bad as initially perceived.
Yeah, it's definitely not a positive for the movie, but it's definitely a positive for Star Wars, the universe, and understanding it.
Yeah, it kind of fills in those gaps. It fills in those questionable decisions, so the movies themselves aren't as plot holy and all that stuff. So, getting back to the Tatooine scenes that were really good, I thought that the pod racing scene was still really fun.
I still enjoyed it too. I thought it was very entertaining. There was a lot of good, almost action.
Yeah.
Even though it's a race, but they had, some good explosions and they had interesting characters in those pod races. Like, it wasn't just a group of people that you didn't know. You were first exposed to the main pod racer that's like won all of these tournaments and stuff when Jar Jar got in a fight with him.
Oh yeah, yeah. They established the antagonist of the pod race basically.
Exactly. And you also got a little more exposed to him as a character when you saw him disabling and messing with the other pods.
Yeah, so I thought that was all really done well. What really makes this series of scenes great, or the pod race great, is the sound design. Oh man, everything sounds so kinetic and like full of energy, and like the ignition sounds for the pod races turning on, the pod racers turning on is great. So I thought that scene, aside from some camera work, is done really well.
Yeah, I think so too. And you had mentioned to me earlier that you did notice one specific thing about the camera work during the pod race, though.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with Chris Stuckman, he reviews a lot of movies, and he reviewed this movie, and almost all of the pod racing scenes are shot panning right from the right or panning from the left. It's really crazy how much they do it, and it didn't ruin it for me, but it was very distracting watching it, keeping that in mind. So if you hadn't seen that review, we just ruined it for you also. So.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that, though, because I did watch the review, but by the time I was midway through watching the pod race, I had completely forgotten about it, and I was just enjoying watching these race scenes, so it didn't completely ruin it for me.
Yeah, it's not as bad. I mean, if you're looking at it from a filmmaker perspective, it might bother you more.
But as a normal everyday viewer like we try to be, then I think you could still find enjoyment in it.
Yeah, it'll probably be fine. So the whole Tatooine stuff, the Anakin, Mother, and Qui-Gon dynamic, I thought was handled well. So that was, I thought, really one of the best things about the movie. The other two great things about the movie were John Williams' score.
Oh my god. I mean,
and the sound design.
I thought we were going to save the best for last.
Oh man, I couldn't wait. John Williams' score. Wow. And the new movies are already learning. They already know to keep on with John Williams, because if there's anything that cannot be argued is bad, is John Williams' score in the prequels.
Yeah, I completely agree.
The Duel of the Fates theme.
I mean, that's one of my favorite, and I think it's one of your favorite scores of all time.
Yeah. We actually saw this song performed live.
In concert.
Yeah, in concert. And wow. And the Duel of the Fates, it might be one of my, if not my favorite, probably top 3 favorite Star Wars themes. I'm always in awe when I hear that. It's so good.
You can't help but when that score starts to play in the final battle, you cannot help but get hyped just for this fight, just because of the music.
Yeah, the music itself, it adds so much weight to the scene.
It adds
it's
tension,
really amazing.
Weight, and I think that it adds a lot of tension that would not have been there had it not been for that score.
Definitely agreed. Speaking of that final lightsaber fight scene, I like the location.
Yep, it was definitely a good location. It was really interesting. You saw all the big power cells of the ship, and you saw, was it a ship? No,
No. It was like the energy reactor under feed.
Yeah.
It wasn't a ship.
It was not a ship.
So the location itself was very cool, very Star Warsy. It doesn't feel like a logical location to have, but it's cool, so it doesn't matter. And a lot of it's the music, but I thought Qui-Gon's death had more gravitas to it than I remember, and also more than people say there is. Obi-Wan, the fighting's a little bit choreographed, but there are definite strikes in there that look like he's out for blood, and Ewan McGregor has a lot of really strong facial acting, and I got the sense that he was mad and was really trying to kill this guy.
Yeah, I definitely thought the same thing when I watched it. I mean, he seemed like most of his strikes were aimed towards the head, just almost kind of like what Luke did or tried to do to Vader, just beat him over the head with a freaking lightsaber. Like, some of the scenes and some of the like instances there, you could tell there was a little bit of choreography, but I think for the most part, when Obi-Wan took over the fight, it seemed very personal at this point, and like he wanted this dude dead.
Yeah, and again, if we had known the characters better, this would have worked even better. But I thought it worked fine.
And let's not forget how awesome Darth Maul looks.
He looks like such a badass. I like his whole like flamboyant fighting style too. It's awesome.
It is very flamboyant, and we've been so accustomed to this for so many years, but I mean, do you remember how it felt the first time you saw the double blade come out?
It's cool. I'm hoping Daisy Ridley's staff in the new movie, I hope it's a double-bladed lightsaber because it's so cool.
It's such an awesome looking lightsaber, and the first time I saw it, I mean, my head was just like, oh my god, he's got two lightsabers connected, like as a kid, and it was so awesome to me, and seeing him use both sides of the lightsaber to block attacks and strike with the other side at like the same time.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. I liked the way he killed Qui-Gon was cool. Again, so some of the choreograph felt like a little ballerina-esque, but some of it looked like wild, nimble, and athletic looking.
And I think that's a big thing that the original trilogy didn't have, that, I might have liked to see a little more nimbleness in the Jedi fights.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that the new movies should take away, especially, are the fight scene, or the Jedi fight scenes in this movie in particular. I mean, you want the emotional weight that the fights in the original trilogy had, but I think if you're gonna have fully trained Jedi, they should move like it. And I know Luke didn't have traditional training, so it made some sense for him not to be as graceful. And Darth Vader, it obviously made sense too. But these are Jedi in their prime, so it makes sense that they'd be moving like this. So I like that.
No, I liked it a lot too, and I'm always happy to see a lightsaber fight, no matter what instance it's in. I mean, it's just cool. Lightsabers are awesome.
Yeah, the whole Force lightsaber thing is what I find most interesting about Star Wars, and which sounds like it'd be obvious, but many people like it more for the space battles, which I think is weird. Because I think the most interesting part about Star Wars is the emotional connections and the Force and the dark side. I think that all that stuff is the best.
Yeah, all those other people are definitely wrong about their opinions.
So I think that there should be the movie's called The Force Awakens, so for the new movie and the future ones, there should be really heavy emphasis on exploration of the Force.
I think, it's possible that the new movie, it's called Force Awakens, so it might not awaken until the end, though.
Oh, man. Oh, no, don't do that. The whole mythology of the Force is super interesting, and you get a lot of that again in the Clone Wars series, the mythology of the Force, and it doesn't over-explain anything. It enhances it, makes it more interesting.
I mean, the best way you can deal with the Force, in my opinion, is to answer a question about it, but ask two more questions about it.
Exactly. I think they need to delve deeper into the nature of the dark side, exactly how it's. I mean, it's very much psychologically manipulative. Like once you taste the power, it kind of coaxes you into it, almost like an entity of its own. But I don't think they necessarily explain that as well.
Yeah, I think, it's the dark side of the Force is not really explained much anywhere that I've read or seen.
I mean, the Clone Wars series explains it a little bit. They go into how, you once you get a taste of that power, it kind of pulls you in. But I don't think they go into it enough.
I feel like that was a very self-explanatory thing. That once Anakin got the taste for the power, he couldn't resist, obviously, and
yeah. Well, it's not just the power; it's the means of what that power can accomplish.
Yeah, it's true, but those are all like byproducts of the dark side. It's not like what the dark side is, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. You get a little bit of that in the Clone Wars with the Mortis arc, which if you're gonna watch any single arc from the show, that's the one I would recommend, or the Yoda one.
Anything with Yoda rocks.
Yeah, Yoda's great. So another thing that the prequels had, particularly Phantom Menace, was Yoda, and they should have Yoda as a Force ghost in the future movies in some capacity.
I mean, Yoda's awesome. It's so hard to have Star Wars without Yoda in there some way, somehow. And in going back to episode 1, which is what we're here to talk about, but going back to episode 1, Yoda, I thought they portrayed his wisdom very well, and especially the end scene where he's talking to Obi-Wan, and he's so adamant about not training Anakin, but he lets the rest of the council agree to it because they're being so pushy with training Anakin. But, I mean, you can really tell that he's strongly against this idea.
Yeah, just how clouded his future is and everything. I think what would have made that last scene work better, because it kind of sounds like the council just randomly changed their mind. I think if they had gone into like a scene where they were discussing it and deliberating it, and then like kind of eventually coming to the idea that they should train him, that would have been better. Yeah. But as it is, it's fine. I thought Yoda was handled well, bar one line. The whole anger leads to fear, leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. And while that's true, suffering can also lead to anger, and anger can lead to feel like
you can arrange those in any order, and it would still make sense.
Yeah, you could form a logic, but I get what he was saying. He's like, if you start with fear, when you lose the people you love, you're going to be angry, and when you're angry, you're going to feel suffering, and when suffering is kind of intertwined with fear and anger. So
yeah, I think so. I think part of that was he was specifically ordering those in that way to relate to exactly how Anakin, his future looked.
Absolutely, but those are most of the good things about the movie. I mean, it's hard to separate what we know now about Star Wars from this movie specifically, but I think to sum it up, lightsaber fights.
Well, hold on.
Oh, you have something?
Of course I have something. What you talking about? But I think you're missing one of the two biggest good positives about episode 1.
Let's hear them.
Well, the first one obviously being John Williams' score.
Yes, of course. John Williams' score.
Secondly, I think George Lucas did an excellent job at world building.
World building. That was something I don't know how I forgot to mention because it was one of my biggest positives, but his world building was really good, and I would almost argue that it's better than it is in the original trilogy. The worlds, they're so much bigger, they're so much more full of life, they're so expansive, and I thought the art direction in general was really good. The droids had some really cool designs, the Jedi looked cool, the art and set design was great.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell that there were definitely some real sets that they were really on there. It wasn't completely CG, which I know a lot of people had problems with in the second and even some of the third. So I think that the actual sets helped out a lot.
Yeah, for the next movie, they should take... I like the lived-in feel of the original trilogy. So a little bit... Some of the environments in the prequels and in this one felt a little sterile. That said, the aesthetic of the environments, that aside, was beautiful, and they felt very expansive. So I think the new movies should take that expansiveness in mind and make these worlds feel big, because the worlds in the original trilogy felt kind of small.
Yeah, they didn't explore a lot of the worlds. They went to a few worlds, but I feel like they were contained to a very small section of those worlds, whereas in episode 1, we went to Naboo and we saw, jungle, we saw underwater, we saw like the actual city, there was a lot that we saw.
In complete agreement, and so I hope that they do that. All it takes is a few shots of the cityscape and of some landscape shots and stuff like that. It wouldn't be too hard, but I thought his world building was done well.
I think so too, and it really helps when you get like seeing different landscapes, I think, in a world to make it feel like a world and not just like, one little quadrant of this one little space, but it feels like this is a world that people live there, that different kinds of people live there.
Yeah, exactly. You got two different races on Naboo. Naboo in particular is very beautiful, I gotta say. I like the designs of all the new starships. Like, everything looks very Star Warsy, with the exception of the sterileness of the environments and stuff. But, I can't express enough how good of a job I thought that they did. And something I hope they just don't just disregard for the new movies out of not wanting to feel familiar to the prequels, because it was something that was done well. And I think they would be remiss if they didn't take the world building to the level that this movie did.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and that's why I had it as my number 2 positive of episode 1.
Yeah, and I assume John Williams' score is the number 1.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so those two things are very important, but I think that's about it, unless you have anything else to add.
No, I think that's about all my observations of episode 1.
That's it for me as well. So just to recap really quickly, we feel these are the things that we feel should be taken away, the positives that should be taken away and taken onto the new movies. So John Williams' score, sound design, the sets and the world building, the beauty of all of it. Artistically, those elements of the movie were really great. And then also, I think they'll have all the emotional moments because they're taking inspiration from the original trilogy. And yeah, those are the big things that they should take away. Don't ignore this movie. There are some good things to be had, I think, that we've explained.
Yep, and there's also some bad things, obviously, that I'm sure everyone's pointed out already, that they know very well what the bad things are, so I don't feel a real need to reiterate those.
Yes, and I think they should maybe touch on the flaws of the Jedi Council in the new movie for people that haven't seen the Clone Wars series. I think that might be something, just in a line of dialogue, how Luke can be like, they weren't perfect. Maybe he saw some holocrons and he saw that was part of what led his father down the dark side, and that kind of stuff. So no silly pandering characters. I don't think they have any of that, so I think we're good there. But that's about it, really. So I think that's gonna be it for us. So Media Men, I think we're out. If you like this video, give us a like, subscribe, let us know what you thought, let us know any good things you thought we missed. Any bad things we thought we missed, though I think the bad things are pretty much covered by most reviews. We really wanted to touch on the good things about this movie, ultimately.
Because we didn't hate it, and if you have a good thing that you liked, we would love to hear what you had to say, as Ben said, because we would be happy to go reconsider all of that and maybe add it to our list of things that can be taken into account for the new movies.
Yeah, so let us know in the comments what you think that they should take from the Phantom Menace and incorporate into the new movies. And if nothing, that's fine. But I think that's about it. I think we're out.
Media Men signing off. Subscribe!